And welcome. My name is Chris Ceppi. I'm a co-founder here at Peer AI and the Chief Operating Officer. I want to welcome everyone to our latest Peer Reviews expert panel. In previous sessions, we've covered topics really focused in the life sciences domain, topics that have included regulatory and privacy implications of using AI in life sciences. We hosted an expert medical writer roundtable where we really got into the nuts and bolts of what it's like to start to automate regulatory medical writing from a medical writer's point of view. And more recently, we provided a quantitative case study that compared traditional methods of medical writing, of authoring regulatory documents, with AI-driven methods, and we kind of scored those against each other. Today's conversation, we're shifting our focus to a deeper consideration of the technology. And we're going to be discussing a rapidly evolving landscape of generative AI and how it's transforming how life sciences knowledge work is done generally, or how knowledge work is done generally, but particularly in life sciences. And so with that, I'd like to introduce today's panel of experts. We're incredibly fortunate to have expert engineers and product builders who have spent decades working in machine learning and really pushing the boundaries of what artificial intelligence is capable of doing. And so we'll start our introductions with Bill MacCartney. Bill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, folks. I'm Bill MacCartney. I've been working in AI for about 20 years. For the last year and a bit, I've been an independent advisor to investors and startups on topics related to AI. And so one of my roles is a part-time role as CTO in residence at SignalFire, a San Francisco VC firm. And that's how I got to know the folks at Peer. My last full-time position was as VP of Machine Learning at Cohere. Cohere is a startup that builds large language models. And so in that role, I led the development of the core technology. Previously, I was at Apple for about 5 years, leading a group called Proactive Intelligence, which is about making product experiences across the Apple ecosystem feel intelligent, feel like they know you and understand you. Earlier in my career, I was a research scientist at Google for about 5 years. Alongside my work in industry, I've had a very part-time role at Stanford as a consulting professor of computer science, which basically just means part-time professor teaching just one class.
Very humbly stated, Bill. Bill teaches a class natural language processing to computer science students at Stanford, so that's great. Thanks for that, Bill, and welcome.
Yep.
Romal Thoppilan, would you like to?
Hey everyone, I'm Romal. I'm currently working as a research scientist in the GenAI division at Google DeepMind. Prior to joining Google, I was one of the founding researchers at Character AI. Before Character AI, I was part of Google Brain, and there I was part of the team that built Google's first large language model.
Fantastic. Welcome, Romal. It's great to have you. Equally humble. When I think you worked on Lambda and Mina in the kind of the early foundational efforts around transformers at Google. So welcome. And Aditi Viswanathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm the engineering lead here at Peer, and it's such an honor to be on a panel with Romal and Bill. Prior to being at Peer, I co-founded a startup called All of Us, which was a GenAI startup where you could talk with expert personas and talk through your problems with them. Prior to that, I was also at Google, so it's like a trio of Googlers here. I was also at Google for about 6 years, and I worked on kind of pre-LLM days. I worked on transformer models. I used to fine-tune transformer models for translation for business purposes, so translation for customer support for businesses. So it was about the time when transformer architecture actually was published and became a thing and was initially used in Google Translate.
And also just a note about Aditi's background is that she was relied upon as a machine learning trainer for Google engineers and external Google customers. So she was teaching people about machine learning and the applications of it in the early days. that at Google. So very quickly, just to tell you a little bit about Peer. And at Peer, what we're doing is we're using generative AI to automate the process of generating regulatory documents for pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies who are developing new treatments and new therapies and new drugs. We're notable in the sense that we're recognized as providing an easy path to automation. In other words, you can apply the benefits of artificial intelligence and its ability to automate key processes of this complex knowledge work, but you can do that without forcing a lot of change management into your processes. So that's kind of where Peer is thought of by our customers. And it gives us an ability to really help our customers or sponsors of research deliver drugs to people that need them faster and ensure that the quality of the trial and the results of the trial are accurately represented to regulators. So we're really excited. We have a team of people who have a background in life sciences and using technology to improve the quality and the operational efficiency of trials. And so that's where we're coming from here at Peer. Today's conversation, as I mentioned, is really more focused on the technology that goes into AI, and then we're going to discuss how that maps into kind of specific use cases, of which Peer is just one. So, where I wanted to start the conversation was with sort of a context setting question. We're all working on this frontier where artificial intelligence is rapidly evolving. And I guess I'm going to point this first question to Bill. And how have recent developments in the reasoning capabilities of large language models kind of expanded the ability to get work done with those models? And how do you think of this rapid evolution in the capabilities for the models and for generative AI?
I mean, it's a thrilling time to be involved in AI because things are moving so quickly. The announcements of new models and new capabilities seem to come every week. It's a challenge to keep up, but it means it's also a really exciting time to be working in this field. I think some of the most important developments over the last year, some of the leading themes have been well, one is multimodality, which a year ago was a novelty, and today is just standard. All of the leading models are now multimodal models, including open source models like Llama. This means they have the ability to ingest documents which are not just plain text, but include figures and diagrams and photos and make sense of them. And that gives these models a much broader ability to make sense of human knowledge. If you think about it, most of the knowledge that you ingest probably comes to you in multimodal form. So it's pretty important that our machines can do that as well. Chrissy mentioned reasoning. That's been another huge theme, especially over the last few months, and I expect will be even more of a prominent theme in 2025. Reasoning is important because it helps us to, or helps our models to understand documents better, and also to follow instructions and solve problems much more capably than was ever possible before. And reasoning really depends on the ability to do some introspection. And so that points to another somewhat broader theme that's becoming very prominent, which people use a lot of different language to describe this theme, but a term you hear a lot is agentic workflows. Agentic workflows really means, rather than trying to get a great answer from an LLM in a single shot, where you just give it a prompt and then you ask it to predict the next token and the next token and the next token, and in one shot give you a good answer, that can be quite hard for complex problems. If you can decompose the problem into smaller pieces and give each of those pieces of the problem to an LLM to solve one at a time, and then sort of recombine them into a final solution for the problem that you're working on, you can get much more powerful behaviors. You can get much greater accuracy to whatever the task is you're trying to solve. And one manifestation of that is better reasoning abilities. There's lots of other manifestations of that, and increasingly I see teams that are trying to build applications on top of AI, adopting this paradigm of agentic workflows, oftentimes using some of the great diversity of agent frameworks that are out there to facilitate it, but sometimes people just roll their own and get great results from building these sort of compound AI systems that combine AI capabilities as building blocks. I'll mention one more theme that's become quite prominent recently, which is computer use. A few weeks ago, Anthropic introduced a model that is able to use a computer kind of the way you and I do, like by driving a mouse and a keyboard. This is a big leap forward because for the last year, these systems have been able to use tools as long as those tools are accessible through APIs. So they can do web search, they can use like a calculator tool or a calendar tool, but they haven't been able to do anything on a computer that you and I could. And that's what this new innovation is about, giving the system the ability to drive a keyboard and a mouse and really do anything on a computer that a human can do, which really means anything that any knowledge worker can do. Anthropic announced this. We expect OpenAI and Google to follow quickly with corresponding capabilities. And I'm anticipating that this will be one of the major and most exciting themes of 2025.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's, that's kind of how at Peer we think about, we're really focused on accomplishing specific pieces of work using the underlying intelligence. And when you think about something being able to actually behave as if it's a user of a computer, that's fits right into that thing. I think there's other trends in terms of like the cost effectiveness and efficiency of the models that are also like expanding the possibility space of what we can accomplish with them. And probably, Romal, you've seen that, like if you think from your early days of the models, then through character AI to what's possible to do with models today, do you think about that in terms of expanding efficiencies?
Yeah, first of all, like plus one to Bill, like it's one of the most exciting times to be working in AI. Like things are changing a lot, and things are improving. So in 2024, one of the biggest development has been that the cost of training large language models has come down significantly, and the trend is still going. The cost is just keeps coming down. Most of it is driven by improvements in efficiency. Like it just takes much lesser compute to train model of similar capabilities. And at a given fixed budget, you just get a higher range of capabilities by just training the model longer. So that's helping a lot. And that's on the pre-training side. Like orthogonally, there have been improvements on reasoning by using post-training and inference time algorithms. And reasoning unlocks something different. Like it unlocks the model's ability to solve a class of problems that were deemed difficult earlier. And we just see small traces of it in like maths and coding because it's just difficult to solve those. But it means that it could solve problems that humans find it difficult and potentially that humans have not solved yet. And also problems that are not seen in the model's training data, which is most of the tasks. Like our training data is not very representative of our day-to-day work that we do. So model's ability to reasoning and do things that are not in its training distribution is just like the most important capability. And when you add this with long context reasoning and multimodal understanding, I think these are like the basis or basic of like what foundational models of the future would look like.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the IQ of the systems is going up and up and up, and then it's happening in combination with all of these other trends in terms of cost efficiency and design patterns. And so that's where you get this, that's where it feels like this frontier is just such a rapidly evolving space. So yeah, it's incredible. So Aditi, you're building every day, leveraging these advances in the capabilities of the underlying models. And I wonder if you had thoughts about, as someone who's trying to accomplish specific tasks, like how you approach that as an engineer in terms of design and implementation. And and how you see
Yes.
the advances supporting that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bill and Romal have given a really great overview of the advancements. And like, I'd like to point out that all of these advancements that we're talking about have all happened in the span of a year and a half or so, or maybe 2 years tops. And as an application builder, uh, this is an exciting, super exciting time to be building applications on top of this, but it's also a really challenging time to be building on top of a foundation that is moving so fast and is uh, taking leaps and bounds every few months. So in the pre-LLM era, you never had to think about, something that you built getting obsolete in 6 months. But here, this is the kind of decision that you have to make. Like, say you built a super complex RAG workflow. So RAG is one of the top uh, methodologies that people use in the industry right now. So say you build something that is complex, and then the main purpose of building something like that would be to kind of take something that's a really large document, for example, and then chunk it up to a size that can be processed by the LLM, chunk it up to a size that can fit into the context window of the LLM. So say you build something like that, then tomorrow a model comes out that has like a 1 million token context window. Your entire workflow is now obsolete. So I think that for us, it becomes super important to be, first of all, aware of the advancements that are going on, aware of what could be coming, and also really strategize and figure out what we want to build and where we want to focus. So what we're doing here at Peer is building in such a way that any new model that comes out is going to enhance our capabilities and not take away from it. So we're not building anything that would say with a new model that comes out that has better reasoning would kind of erase from any of the workflows that we build. It would always make our product better. So that's kind of the view that we have. How we accomplish this is just by like understanding what's going on in the industry, and also understanding at what points in our product additional reasoning or slightly better reasoning capabilities uh, would solve our problems. And those problems we don't put too much effort into right now. We maybe have a human in the loop, or we have additional QC that we do on those particular steps. But we always build with the view that the models are only going to get better and better and better from here. And our product also needs to keep up. And uh, we need to be able to give our customers the advancements in the models, and we need to be able to expose them to the advancements in models as fast as they're actually happening.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's why we were all so excited about this time. And as people who work in technology, it's like perpetual invention, just this ongoing continuous state of invention. And then the strategy and the product thinking, and where we can be really helpful to our customers, or people who are getting, looking for specific value from the AI to do work, is abstracting all of the advancements into something that's just going to work and just going to improve. And I think that's fascinating. Bill brought up agentic workflows as like an interesting evolution. And I think that is, one of the challenging things about being on a frontier. There's not a lot of patterns or blueprints that we're following, but one pattern that has evolved is this idea of an agentic workflow, or you hear it referred to as a compound AI system, which is really a number of different processes and functions, many of which are driven by the large language model, many of which are API calls into the models, and many of which might be standard software coming together. And I wonder, Romal, do you want to talk about like, what is the difference between, like, say, an application like ChatGPT that's just kind of direct interaction with the LLM and leveraging the intelligence to answer specific questions, and then an agentic workflow or something that compounds different functions together?
Right. So I agree with Aditi, like things are changing and evolving very fast, and it's just difficult to design systems for the future, right? Like you cannot predict the future, and how are you ready for the future? And this is also one of the questions that we ask as researchers, like how to design the base model that's gonna live for uncertainties in the future, right? And I think the base model, like the right solution to this could be like you don't try to solve everything with the base model. But instead you allow the base model to have a horizontal set of capabilities that later on downstreams that helps more downstream performance with like data and with integrations and everything. So these capabilities could look like long context reasoning, right? So as long as it has this horizontal ability to reason with like longer context, downstream teams can just like decide what goes into the context and what makes sense in the context and what should be the order of things in the context. And similarly, it could learn to call Python functions, but irrespective of like what exactly the function is, just with the doc strings. So that's an horizontal ability. And downstream can just like figure out what to integrate with and how to incorporate feedback, what tools to call. And it's just much more difficult if a base model tries to accomplish all of the possible downstream possibilities.
Yeah. And Bill, that space between like how much space the base model will take up in terms of getting tasks done and how much will remain there, for the application space, is that something you think about, or how that plays out over time?
Absolutely. By the way, when you interact with ChatGPT through the web UI or through the app, it's already the case that there's a fair amount of what you might describe as a compound AI system that you're interacting with. You're not just directly interacting with the base model, but instead behind the scenes, ChatGPT is trying to understand your request, whether it needs to invoke any external resources, going ahead and invoking those, getting the results, digesting the results, figuring out how to incorporate those back into the response to you. So more and more, as the technology evolves, as people expect more of these agents or assistants or chatbots, more and more of that agentic workflow, that compound AI system, is getting encapsulated under the hood of the product that you interact with. Of course, if you're building an application and you call APIs from OpenAI or Google or others, you have more direct access to the base model. And very often when teams are building applications, maybe it's an enterprise application on top of those APIs, a lot of the work is in figuring out how to decompose the problem into pieces that are very manageable for the LLM, that can be optimized with very sort of task or subtask specific prompts, and finding ways to optimize those individual pieces to add up to a whole.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, Aditi, from a practical perspective, like we've kind of done a lot of that design thinking with the specific intention of authoring a regulatory document that represents the results of the research of a clinical trial. And so I wonder if you could talk specifically about some of the implementation approaches that you've taken kind of with that specific use case in mind.
Yeah, for sure. So we're calling what we've built a compound AI system, in that we have multiple different components that do different tasks that finally result in the regulatory document being created. So it first starts with ingesting data sources. So here we're talking about like hundreds of data sources. Each data source could be like hundreds to thousands of pages long. And they're things like a patient's, like all the patients that enter a clinical trial. It could be like a listing of all of their blood pressure measurements and all of their heights and weights and blood test results and things like that. So you have these individual listings. So what we have to do is take this kind of unstructured data. We can ingest data in any format. We don't need it to be structured. We can kind of ingest it where the customer's at, like what data source that they have, what format they have it in. We're able to ingest that and process it. And it entails, like taking unstructured data, making it structured, being able to query it. On the other side of actually creating the document, there's a lot of domain expertise that goes into creating these documents. There are templates that are created by the FDA and EMA and all of these regulatory bodies. These give broad level guidelines, but then we have this profession of medical writers that has come out with really specific rules and ways to ensure quality when submitting these documents. These rules are things like, if there is statistical significance for a particular endpoint, you would list out the mean and standard deviation of that particular endpoint. But if there isn't statistical significance, if the p-value does not show significance, then you wouldn't list it, you would just create a broad statement. Or, you would have something like, you would spell out a numeral at the beginning of a sentence, but then it would always be in the number form in the middle of a sentence. So there are these really specific ways to ensure that, it's a readable and good quality document. And we're kind of bringing all of that domain expertise into the product and being able to create the final document with all of that expertise in mind. So that is one component of it. And then there's another component of a bunch of post-processing and quality checks and things like that we do that comes after the document is created, after the initial document is generated. So it could be things like making sure that the data is accurate, making sure that abbreviations through the document are defined at first use and then abbreviated to the rest of the document. So what we are doing is essentially using the intelligence of that foundational model and using as much intelligence and reasoning capability as we can, the more the better for us, and like kind of marrying it to that domain knowledge and expertise and marrying it to where our customers are at with their current data and with their current tools. So yeah, not expecting them to make big changes, but the way that humans do it right now, we should be able to use those same data sources and produce a document.
And it's such a thoughtful exercise, as someone who spent most of my software career in the pre-LLM era, but who still gets a thrill out of seeing software accomplish a task. The types of tasks that can be accomplished in software today are so exciting, like something nerdy, like just doing the abbreviations correctly for one of these regulatory documents requires such a level of capability of the software to run the machine learning and the algorithms and apply the intelligence required to do something like correctly render abbreviations through a very complex scientific medical document. It's incredible. And I wonder, Romal, you have thoughts about like pre-LLM era capabilities versus, since you've kind of seen that transformation over time in terms of what the possibility space looks like now.
Yeah, sure. Like 20 years back, we were like the most important problem at Google scale was like doing spell checks, right? Like, and it was like really challenging to do spell checks at that time, point of time. And even if you dial back like five years back, the way chatbots then were built, for example, Google Assistant or Alexa, the technology was very different. The thing that I could see is like back then building these technology would require a lot of data and had like generative AI was not a thing. It was more retrieval based. And this overall system would just look so dumb. Irrespective, like you have to put a lot of money and a lot of investment into it to make it look decent for launch, right? And now we are in an era where we are trying to solve more and more challenging problems, and with like less and less data involvement in it. So it just allows us to solve problems that we couldn't deem possible like a few years back, and now it's suddenly it's how it is evolving. Like these are the use cases for the future. Yeah, like very exciting to be part of this journey.
Yeah. And I'll encourage anybody in the audience to submit questions via the Q&A interface if you have questions for the expert panel. And I think that's right, Romal. And then it brings into question the interface between the human AI interface, and so like, because a lot of, AI is driving the way work is done, changes in that. So the job of, let's say, a medical writer or the job of a lawyer other types of knowledge work is really changing. And Bill, have you thought, do you give thought to like where humans need to still be in workflows and how the human AI interface is also evolving, the capabilities of what the AI can present and how humans interact with that and where they're still required in different places?
Yeah, it's really changing the nature of knowledge work. I mean, I think we're only at the beginning of this process, so I don't want to overstate it. But I think over the next couple of years, it's going to liberate us from most of the tedious aspects of knowledge work and enable us to focus on kind of the higher level and more interesting parts of the work. I've thought about this the most with regard to software engineering. This is one of the areas where these new capabilities have had the most impact, the quickest. It's also one that I'm able to understand better because I've done a lot of software engineering myself and written a lot of code. I think already it's changing the way software engineers work. It's already the case that a lot of fairly tedious code writing can be automated, and it puts the software engineer more into the role of a software reviewer or of a code reviewer. So instead of laboriously figuring out line by line exactly how to integrate with some SDK that you're not familiar with, you can let an LLM write the code for you and then figure out how to validate that it's the correct thing. LLMs are having a huge impact in testing as well, in automatically writing unit tests and things like that. So more and more, it puts the software engineer in the role of not so much working through the details, but figuring out what work needs to be done. And managing this AI assistant in getting the work done. It kind of elevates the work that the software engineer is doing. And I think we've gone the furthest in software engineering, but I expect a similar pattern to be repeated across a lot of different areas. A great example of that is legal writing. Law firms have had people spending lots of time digging through case files, trying to extract the relevant details, looking for precedents, all of which is quite tedious work, and then drafting these often mind-numbingly boring contracts. And I think a lot of that work is going to be automatable now, and it's going to enable legal professionals to focus much more on strategic questions and on figuring out what should be done and not necessarily all the details of exactly how to do it.
Yeah. And we see examples of those two use cases and others, and I think they're both interesting in the sense that there is this evolution in the nature of being a software engineer, that type of work, and of being a lawyer or paralegal. The net result in both of those examples is what I believe, anticipate, is an improvement in the quality of the work, because where the human intelligence is getting applied actually becomes more relevant to the ultimate end product, the quality end product. The AI can kind of provide a consistent base level of output or content that then the human intelligence can be applied to the quality. In regulatory medical writing, quality is a top level concern with the regulators, obviously, and the sponsors of the research. Aditi, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, and we're winding down here, but if you could talk a little bit about how AI helps us kind of drive toward, and we've seen this in our quantitative review of the work, comparative work, but how AI is driving higher degrees of quality in the output documents.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Bill that, it removes a lot of the tediousness of human work right now. So I guess as I've become more exposed to this regulatory medical writing domain, I've kind of begun to understand how it works currently as humans do it. So it's a lot of, like scrolling through huge PDFs, finding data points, and then copy pasting them into a Word document over and over and over. and then going and, verifying that it's right, formatting it correctly, doing all of that. So, right now we have a software that does all of that basically. Like you don't need to go and look at that document manually. You don't need to copy paste anything. You can just tell the AI to do it. And also exporting it into Word, we do all the formatting for you. We do all the, putting stuff into nice tables, adding nice footnotes, adding nice captions, adding a table of contents, like all of that, adding hyperlinks, things that are really tedious for humans to do. We're able to do it. And where the medical writer is left with at the end of the day is actually looking at the output, reviewing it, and assessing whether the quality is okay or not, and maybe reprompting it or, like editing it post the main thing, like the main content is generated. So I think that, yeah, like having that base and having the humans, medical writers' time freed up to do this higher level thinking probably automatically improves quality, just so they can now, spend the time that they have uh, in actually reviewing and making these small edits, rather than, spend the bulk of their time just getting pieces in place and then, reviewing against a tight deadline.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
yeah,
right.
we also kind of control for, the seniority of medical writers. So maybe like a junior medical writer has a big advantage in such a product, just because they now don't need as many years of industry experience to come out with, what are the right data points to put out in this particular uh, document. We have that already encoded because we use, the experience of domain experts who have spent that long in the industry to build the product.
Yeah, that's right. And that's been a big learning. We started Peer just a little over a year ago. And I think we come from life sciences background where we know that quality is so important, but it's been fascinating to see how the automation can actually drive improved quality output. Like that was a learning for me. It wasn't something that I anticipated, but it's been really, really interesting to observe. Well, I guess I would just open it up for closing thoughts. Each of these topics could go in all sorts of different directions. We could speak for probably 3 hours if we started to get into more technical areas. But I guess, Bill, do you want to kind of just like think about like what are you interested in seeing in the next year? What do you have things that you're anticipating seeing over the next maybe 3 months or 6 months? I don't know the time horizon we should think about. But like I know this anthropic use of the computer is one that has lots of possibility behind it.
Yeah. One of the themes that I've been looking for a while, and that I still expect to be a major theme over the next couple of years, is an increasing move toward using downstream outcomes to improve the models themselves. Today, we have a fairly rigid separation between training and inference, building the model and using the model. You train the model on a whole bunch of data from the internet, maybe you do some fine tuning for instruction following or for dialogue, but then the model's finished, it's frozen, and you don't change it anymore. And then you just use it for some application. And this misses an opportunity to drive improvements in the model from the downstream outcomes that it's driving on specific applications. And so I expect to see more and more model providers looking for ways to close the loop by using those downstream outcomes to actually kind of conceptually backpropagate into the model and improve the model itself. The analogy I think of here is the way Google uses user interactions with search results to improve search ranking. So in search, if you click on the 5th result instead of the 1st result, that constitutes weak evidence for Google that it got the search ranking wrong, that it should have ranked the 5th result higher and the 1st result lower. And maybe that one data point is not that significant, but Google will aggregate that evidence across millions or billions of interactions and use it to tweak the parameters of their search ranking algorithm to get better results over time. And they do this in a fairly continuous way. So there's a huge opportunity to do something similar for LLMs. and increasingly to lean on customer interaction data, user interaction data as our primary source of feedback and data for improving the model ongoing.
Yeah, we see that trend too. And Romal, a question came in about your background at DeepMind or your work at DeepMind, and like, what are some of the things that you're excited about, like as you survey the possible projects that you can get into as a research scientist there?
Yeah, so as Bill mentioned, like it would be very nice if our AI could just like self-learn from its own experiences, and that's not how we work with AI currently. But yeah, and there's a difference between like how efficient humans are in terms of learning. Like we as humans, we don't need a lot of data points to learn. We just like could adapt with like looking at fewer examples, and that makes us more apply our abilities in like in a more general way, and be able to solve range of problems that's more broader. But like AI right now would need more domain specific data for it to adapt, and there's always like missing data. So there seems to be a gap, right? And the ideal way could be you just employ an AI. It has this memory of its experiences, and it somehow keeps cooking itself with that experience. And yeah, like we are certainly not there yet. We started doing some tool use. It needs to use more and more tools. And I think a key theme in terms of like the nature of work that needs to happen is like we need to adopt more AI in our own work, and that applies to me as well in my day to day. Like, how am I spending my time? Right? Like, am I using AI to speed up my own velocity of work? Yeah, and that becomes important. Yeah, like I'm in a place to be solving these problems at DeepMind. It's very exciting to be doing that.
Yeah, and I think at Peer, we've really focused on bringing domain expertise from medical writing in-house and working alongside our engineering expertise on the AI side, and seeing that collaboration kind of advance the capabilities of our solutions to do things. I think Aditi now, I think, could qualify as a medical writer. She's gotten so deep in the understanding of that, and that seems like a key ingredient as we put applications on top of all of that, of that whole set of capabilities. Aditi, I don't know if you want to take us out of the webinar with just a little thought about your learning curve in understanding the medical writing domain, and how it's that use case drives the way you're innovating or thinking about being creative about how to design and implement an AI application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't know medical writing was a profession. Like, I didn't know this profession existed. So that was where I came from. But it's a really detailed and really quality-oriented profession. And it's been super interesting to, understand the space and understand life sciences and regulatory medical writing as a whole. Yeah, I think that going forward, maybe domain expertise is the thing that matters most, rather than, like even engineering skills or anything else like that. It's, the more domain expertise you have, you're always going to be valuable, I think, in this new world.
On the technology side, you mean? Like for the technologists, is that?
Yeah, for medical writers too. Like, yeah, because I mean, you're always going to need, like you said, these are multi-billion-dollar programs, and you're always going to have that human in the loop, and the human who has the most domain expertise and who can like judge the best and review the best is always going to be an important part of the system.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I think just being part of the company and seeing you're doing your work, it's like a model of the type of collaboration that allows AI to be really meaningfully impactful in these really important industries. It's really important how long it takes a safe and effective drug to get to market. And so it's through this collaboration, and that's why we brought together the technology side of the house to kind of share this side of the conversation with our audience, which is generally coming at things from a life sciences point of view. So I really appreciate each of your sharing your expertise with us and carving out the time to participate in the conversation. It'll be an ongoing conversation. As we said, we're on a frontier. So maybe we'll check in, in 6 months or a year, and we'll see like how things have advanced so far. So I appreciate everyone attending the webinar. You can contact Peer through hello@getpeer.ai if you have additional questions or need additional details on any aspect of what we've discussed today. But I want to personally thank Bill and Romal and Aditi for their time and their generosity with their expertise.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.